Today I'm going to be showing you all how I believe you should be playing Espeon. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's start with items. Unfortunately, I believe the ratios for Espeon are not out yet, but I can tell you what items I've been running recently and what I think works pretty well. There are two sets I've been liking a lot. The first set is what you see on the screen, Wise, Buddy, and Energy Amp. The second set is going to be Muscle, Wise, Muscle, Buddy, and Focus Band. So I was running special attack specs earlier, and you're extremely squishy and have no mobility, so when you go for those dunks, it's kind of painful. You can die pretty easily. But then on top of that, I don't feel like I get that much from the actual stacking of the specs like I would on something like Gengar. So these are the two sets I've been liking. If you guys want an updated version of this, in a day or two, we'll have the ratios out, so I'll be able to crunch the numbers. You guys can go to my stream and type !Espeon, and the items will be there. Now that we've talked about items, let's talk about abilities, starting with base form Eevee. So Espeon's Eevee acts differently than Sylveon's Eevee. Even though it has Swift, this Swift has different properties than Sylveon's. So Swift has 3 missiles and it'll all fire at the targeted direction, similar to Heimerdinger's rockets if you've ever played League. So if you do it really close to you, it'll split out and hit like that. This is a really good last hitting tool as you can put it behind things and it'll pierce, like so. So you can hit people trying to last hit and the minion at the same time to do damage and try to secure. It does really good damage too, so it's also really good for last hitting. Now Growl is just a targeted projectile. It just does damage and slows, nothing really special there. Eevee's passive is a little bubble over here that makes you immune to ACC if hit. It's similar to Duraludon's where when you get hit, it goes on cooldown, but it's all CC, or hindrances I should say, unlike Duraludon's, which is just knockups, so it's a directly better version of that. When you become Espeon, it reflects damage and slows, I believe. So that's cool, I guess. It's a slight upgrade. The basic attack for Eevee doesn't actually do anything. It just does extra damage on the third one. It's not until Espeon that you get a unique basic attack. So you see this bar under me? That's my boosted auto attack. And when charged up, it fires a laser like so. Once I fire the laser, I have to wait an amount of time, honestly I don't know how long that is, to get my boosted auto back. It looks like 5 seconds. I could fire it again. So this game I chose Psyshock. It functions very similarly to Swift, so it goes to a targeted area much like Heimerdinger's rockets, and it can spread out like so. Your goal is to fire all the rockets onto a singular target like that, and if you do so, it'll stun and do massive damage. So you can see I'm level 5 and it already does that much damage. That's pretty insane. Once you hit level 6, you can pick between Psybeam or Future Sight. We're going to pick Psybeam because it actually has synergy with Psyshock for this one. So the way Psybeam works is it's just a linear skill shot that does percent HP damage. This percent HP damage, however, can split into other targets. So Psybeam hits a single target and then it can bounce to other things, like so. When it hits that single target, it copies part of its percent HP and it spreads that percent HP damage to other characters. So if I hit this big B, which I think I missed, it'll do more damage than if I hit the small Bs. Like so. You can see the damage difference there. Another interesting aspect of Psybeam is if I hit a stun target or a target with any hindrances on it, it will transfer those hindrances over to other targets. As you can see, even though those things didn't get stunned by the Psyshock, they get stunned by the Psybeam, which stunned the Vespiquen. Boom. So your standard combo with Psybeam would be Psyshock into Psybeam, like so, if you're running that. So we talked about Psyshock, so now let's move on to stored power. At the time of me making this video, this move is god-awful. Just don't pick it, but for the sake of in case they buff it in the future, I'll talk about it. So stored power has like a missile system, or like a charge ammo system, that's the word I'm looking for. And it stores up to 5, as you can see in the bottom, but like even when it comes off cooldown, it doesn't have the full amount of things, which is really stupid. So it already does low damage, but then on top of that, you don't even get to really spam it, even though it's supposed to be a spammable move. it functions similarly to Mystical Fire, where it'll hit enemies in the area. But instead of getting a dash, you get a move speed buff. So let's go move over here. It all focused on that guy. You hit others? Nope, doesn't want to hit others. All right. Well, sometimes it'll hit others, sometimes it won't. Honestly, I haven't really figured out how that works yet. There's nothing really too complicated about the move. If you run Future Sight, which is what we're going to be taking now, it'll make it so way all the stored powers will go onto a singular target. So I threw Future Sight on him, and all the stored powers go on him. Now, Future Sight itself is a much more interesting move than Stored Power is. So Stored Power is just whatever, you cast it, you get stuff. One thing I forgot to mention is that your boosted auto will give you missiles back. So you see I'm at waiting 2. I autoed, it went to 3. Now I'm at 4. Future Sight, however, has a lot of stuff to it, so bear with me. So it's a targeted ability that goes on a target, obviously, and it has a slight delay. After that delay, it'll pop and do damage. It also has an execute factor to it, so it does more damage the lower their HP is. I believe it's 10% missing health, but I'm not 100% sure. When Future Sight is on a target, your abilities are all focused onto said target. So that's good too. That also works with Psy Beam, or Psy Shock rather, so good to know. Another aspect of Future Sight is if you can kill someone with Future Sight on them, you get a enhanced version of your R ability. So either Stored Power or Psy Shock. I'm going to try and demonstrate that here. Okay, so he has Future Sight on him. I killed him. Now you can see I have enhanced Stored Power. So this one is way cooler. It has like twice as many missiles. And it does not share a cooldown with whatever your base R ability is. So both Stored Power and Psy Shock will continue ticking their cooldown while that ability is up. So in theory, you can chain both of them together. So if you get a single reset from Future Sight, you can just start blowing people up. Another thing that I forgot to mention is that Future Sight's cooldown gets lowered when you hit it with stuff, or hit the target with stuff. So it went from 7, now it's at 2, and I can use it again. So this is really strong with both Stored Power and Psy Shock because they both have multi-hit moves, or they both are multi-hit moves. Let's talk about the enhanced versions of the attacks for Stored Power and Psy Shock. So I believe they both do more damage. For Stored Power, you get more missiles as shown there. The ammo system that's normally on Stored Power is not applicable for that. I think it just does the max ones, +1 or so, I think. On top of that, it heals HP. I'm not sure how big the heal is, but it does. For Psy Shock, I just know it does more damage, and I think it has a larger AoE. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't been able to figure that one out yet. So now that we talked about the basic abilities, let's move on to the ult. So the ult is very confusing in the sense that I don't know how strong it is. It's pretty basic to use. It's just a cast that stuns for a while, or rather like knocks up or whatever, holds them in place, and then after a short duration, it knocks players back, or anything in the area back. Similar to Blastoise ult, you can flash during the ult to pull people into it. I don't know why it keeps casting like that. Or rather, you can press it and then flash like that and it'll pick people up, but if you wait too long, I believe it won't. Like so, it didn't pick it up. So you'd have to flash early in order to pick the people up. But it'll still do the knockback, as long as you end up flashing. It does a mediocre amount of damage. It'll do about 1,000 damage or so. I think at level 15 it does 1.5k. Yeah, and that's to a 0 defense thing, so it's not going to be too much damage. But the real utility in this move is for objectives. So if you look at this thing can cover an entire objective pit, right? So this is going to make flipping extremely strong. You can just sit here, it'll CC them for that whole time, and it'll knock them out. One thing I forgot to mention is that you have to unstoppable before this hits and not after, otherwise you won't be able to full heal yourself out. So you have to cast full heal before the ult goes off, and the ult is instant. So it's not like Gardevoir's where you can reaction full heal and then walk out. You're going to have to preemptively do it, or you're going to preemptively flash out. This is also going to be very strong at Dread, especially given the Hoopa meta. So what you can do is if a Hoopa puts down a portal like right here, and you're on Dread, whatever, you're hitting Dread, blah, 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 it gets low, you can just ult on top of the portal, so that way the people that are coming through the portal and the Hoopa itself are getting knocked up / stunned, and then they'll all get knocked back, and you have a pretty good chance of securing the Dreadnought. So that's really strong. So we've talked about Espeon's abilities, now let's move on to gameplay. Espeon can fit in both the attacker and jungle position, so play her wherever you feel like. One interesting strategy you can do if you're 5-stacking is you can do the buff split strat, so you can have Espeon take one buff and another person take the other buff, and then you guys go run over to your lanes because you'll be level 4, and you can go have a field day. In the early game, if you're going to lane, try to time last hits with Swift. It does a large amount of damage, and it goes through everything, so nothing can block it. It should be pretty easy to secure last hits with it if you time it with other people. Once you get Psyshock, it's just Swift but better, has a stun, and does more damage and has more projectiles, so abuse its high execute range and the fact that you can chunk out enemies for half their health for fun on a 5-second cooldown. Don't forget about magic bounce, your passive. You can use it to ETC while playing aggro, so you can play in the enemy's face even if they're playing CC characters like say Pikachu with Electro Web, and then just eat that while staying in their face. You also have a pretty high auto attack range, unlike Sylveon, so you can try and abuse that as well. In the mid game, if you get a Future Sight reset with Psyshock, then you can one-shot pretty much anyone in the game, so if you can get that, just look for that. You want to look to engage with your Unite move if possible. Always be looking for opportunities with that. It's a very strong Unite move. It can set up your allies extremely well. You can make it so everyone gets AoE'd and just dies instantly. While the Unite move into Psyshock is not a true combo, it is still a very strong combo nonetheless. That'll do like 80% of someone's health instantly. So try to look out for that right after the Unite. You can just dump a Psyshock where they are, assuming they don't have mobility. Don't forget that even though you have a melee range Unite move, you're actually an attacker. So you're very squishy, similar to like a Ninetales without Veil. So you can pop very fast, so position accordingly. Psyshock has really good secure on Dreadnought and Rotom due to its high damage and the fact that you can't counterplay it. So when it starts to get low, you can look to save Psyshock for that. This is especially true if you get the reset with Future Sight. You can double Psyshock and just kill it from like 15% health or so instantly, which is really cool. In the late game, you do really good damage to Zapdos, and you have really good zone control with Psyshock and your ult. So you want to play near the Zapdos pit with your team, making sure someone is near you so you don't get picked off on your own. And remember, Espeon doesn't really have mobility, so it's pretty easy for you to get picked off if you're not playing with your teammates. Don't be afraid to unite a single target, especially at Zapdos timing if it means that you know they're going to die. If you have allies near you, you can just unite someone, well, a priority target, obviously. You wouldn't want to unite like a Trevenant or something. And then take them out of the game, and then you can look to do Zapdos or pressure it at least to force the enemy to come in and look for a fight. Hiding in bushes is very strong because you can do insane amount of damage with poke, just with Psyshock and then running away. They'll do like half of someone's health and then you just walk away. So abuse bushes, similar to like Gengar. Be wary of assassins and keep your finger on your Unite move if they exist. Assassins can one-shot you pretty easily, something like a Zero or a Gengar, like mentioned before. Once again, you're an attacker, even though it kind of doesn't feel like an attacker, it's kind of weird, so keep that in mind. Anyway, that's it for this guide. If you guys like this stuff, like, favorite, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You know, all that good stuff, help the algorithm out, help me out. If you guys want to see gameplay of Espeon, down in the description below, I'll put my link to my Twitch. You guys can check out gameplay for Espeon there. I'm going to be playing it all day today and likely tomorrow as well, as I enjoy the character a lot. It's one of my favorite Pokemon. So anyway, until next time, take care.